you're going to want to turn your petcock to off, which will stop letting fuel into this line, but there's going to be fuel in this line and in the bowl, so you'll want to drain the bowl of the carb first. Start off, put this tube into a gas can, runs down to here. After turning off your fuel petcock, and just unscrew it and let the fuel drain out of that line and out of the bowl here. And when you go to take your carb apart, you don't get gas all over you, just a few drops. Alright, so first you have your bolt holding the carb to the intake. You got 8mm on this side, 10mm on this side, so you remove both of those. You have your fuel line right here. So you're just going to pinch that and then pull your fuel line up. Take your O-ring and your plastic gasket. It's going to have another O-ring on the other side. Remember the order in which they went. Make sure they're not damaged at all. You're going to unscrew the throttle cable right here, and that will just come straight out. You're going to have your crankcase breather. It goes back through to the crankcase over here. Just going to pinch the clamp and remove that pipe. Alright, if yours is like mine, on the crankcase breather, it'll actually pull out that way. So don't even bother removing the clamp here, just pull it straight out of the carb right there. So this is a fun game we play called Don't Mess Up Your Carb. So I've got, these are welding sleeves, but it's just leather. You can use a thick cloth or something like that so you don't damage these mating surfaces on the intake or the air filter side. Clamp it in there good, because next we're going to take a hacksaw and we're going to make these blade screws instead of safety screws. So what you want to do now, if you did it with a hacksaw like me, you may have to file down the end of your blade screwdriver so that it fits into the hacksaw groove. You can do it with a Dremel too. It may give you a little more space, maybe a little quicker. I just like a little more finesse. Then we're just going to take these safety screws out. That's all it is. Once you have removed the 3 screws with your nice new blade tip on them, remove the bowl. There is a gasket. Gasket didn't come off on this one. And now we are left with the float, the main jet, and the pilot jet. Let's see what's in here. You may need to hold the seat that the main jet fits in, otherwise it will come out with it. All you're looking for is the top of the main jet. So our main jet, don't know if you'll be able to see this, appears to be an 82. And our pilot, if you look on the side, it's stamped on there, appears to be a 35. There we go. So that is the reason you upgrade your main jet. You see that tiny little orifice that the main goes through. So that's going to be everything over half throttle is limited through that jet. That is the stock 85. And here's just one step up. You can see the stamping right there. That is an 88. Notice how much more daylight's getting through. Quite the upgrade. Just tiniest little bit more. Now that being said, we've got the 88, the 90, and the 92 coming from the 85. I'm actually going to skip the 88 and go straight to the 90. That's what runs right on my quad with the exact same size engine and a similar carburetor. So we're going to start at a 90. If I have to go down, that's fine, but I'll be running rich, not lean, which is what I'm afraid of doing with that one. So we're down here now. This is your air fuel mixture screw, hidden below a safety cap. I have not found a great way to do this, so I'm going to try this time as the tiny little tip of this pick and see if I can pop it out. Typically I'll end up hacksawing in through the side just at the brass cap level and then popping it out that way, but it kind of boogers up the carb, so we'll see what we can do. Alright, I gave up. All I was able to do was pick away some of the brass. Can't seem to get through it. So I'm coming back in with the hacksaw and I'm going to go right at the level that brass cap is at. First I'm going to put these screws back in so this doesn't get any of the steel shards down in the carb. So this is about as far as you need to go. because now we're just going to break that steel off and we'll be able to reveal the side of that cap and then pop it out. Now you can see it boogers it up, but that's the brass cap we're going to pop out, and it'll be our air fuel screw below. Alright, you'll fight it a little bit, but then you're revealed with an actual blade screw instead of a safety cap that'll throw you off. First thing you're going to do, run this in and count how many turns it was out, and that's your starting point, as long as it's somewhere between 1/2 and 3. Mine was 1 1/2, so I'm just going to start at like 1 3/4 now and use that as my starting point. Alright, so let's get into the details here. You have your pilot jet and your air fuel screw. Operate your pilot circuit. That's for your lower throttle. Once you open the throttle up even more, your needle on your actual throttle cable pulls out of this and allows this main jet to function at its full capacity and push through for higher throttle. You have your float, which is allowing the fuel bowl to stay full. So for those of you who have a bike that is sitting still and overflowing out of the overflow, even though the overflow screw is closed, it's actually coming through this tube, and that's because your float level is incorrect. So the float on this one should be about level, slightly below when just sitting flat on the ground upside down. So you adjust that by adjusting your tang, which is this metal tab right here. You can bend it very slightly in either direction and it will adjust the float height where it sits at rest. So what we're doing is adjusting our main jet. We went from an 85 to a 90. Our pilot was a 35. That's probably pretty close. So we're going to keep that there, and I opened up the air fuel screw, so increasing the fuel in the pilot circuit about 1/4 turn. I may go more, but now that it's open, I can get under the bike with this little blade screwdriver and get to it even without opening the carb. So I can adjust that while it's idling. Everything else should pretty much stay the same, except if you have extra, get rid of these safety screws and put in real Phillips head screws for your actual carb. So this is labeled as a PZ26 off of a Trailmaster TM29. Looks like around. It is about 26 millimeter. And then the air intake, for those of you trying to buy other aftermarket filters, at the collar, let's get on it right. Oh, that was stupid. At the collar, so where the air intake should fit, it's about 38 millimeter. So you can put a 38 millimeter air filter, and it is indeed actually about a 26 millimeter intake, using what I believe is the Kind style carburetor jets. And I'll post a link to those. This is indeed your idle screw. What have they done now? Let's start picking away at that. Okay, not nearly as bad. Rubber screw, small blade. Again, pick yourself up a little tiny small blade screwdriver for the air fuel screw and for this. This is your idle adjustment. After the bike is started up, N is going to make the idle speed up. So screwing it in will make it speed up, and unscrewing it will make it slow down the RPMs. Installation, reverse of taking it off. So first we're going to put on our lines and our throttle cable, and then we're going to put our carburetor back on, making sure we don't miss our gasket here, the plastic, and the second gasket there. While we're down here, we'll pull the needle and see if it's adjustable. Tends to not be on a stock bike, but worth looking at. So pulling the needle is pretty straightforward, but there's almost zero chance I can do it with one hand. You're going to collapse the spring all the way up, which is going to free up the end of that cable to pop out and come up that groove and through that hole that it fits through. And then this needle will come off and we'll be able to look at it. Stock spring, the thing is pretty stiff. Good luck with that. That's what it looks like with that removed. Here's our needle, so we're just going to pop that out. Do not lose your little clip. Let's check out the needle. If I ever get to it. Let's see if we can get it to focus. Stock needle is not adjustable at all. One position. You may be able to set a small washer under it if you want to try that. If you're still needing, this is going to affect your middle to high RPM. And actually, I'm sorry, about quarter to 3/4 throttle, something like that, where the main jet hasn't fully engaged, but this is coming up and out of the jet seat, the main seat. So not adjustable from the factory, but you can easily add a little washer on there. So putting your throttle cable back in the carburetor is pretty straightforward. You've got a long groove there and a short groove on the opposite side. That thicker, short groove, you can see it's sloped. That is your idle adjustment. So if you look down in here, you see the off of the idle screw, right? That down in there, as that pokes out more, that will push your throttle cable up more, letting in more air, inherently letting in more fuel and raising the idle. So when you put this in, make sure the thick, short groove is on the idle adjustment screw side and fully seats. So the most common problem is that people put their carb back together and then their bike is running away with RPMs. It's because it's just pushed up off the top of that idle screw. That idle screw is kind of stuck at the bottom of that groove right there. Tighten up your throttle cable, and that is what a properly seated throttle cable should look like. And do not mount this thing until you pull your throttle and make sure it's acting like it should. So first, crankcase breather, your fuel line, and then go to get it mounted, but do not forget your gaskets. For those of you who already forgot, rubber ring against the carburetor, another gasket against the intake, and your flat plastic against that one, and bolts and nuts through that. So, for those of you watching at home, I'm measuring the intake. It is indeed about 26 millimeter. Oh, there you go. I'm probably a little off center, but call it 26. But we have our little crappy plastic, right? What size do we think it is? It is 20. Talk about restriction. We're gonna fix that. This seems like a bad idea. Oh well. So here's my plan. The circle was likely in the center. It just needs a few mils shaved off all the way around. So as long as my circle, first of all, it doesn't touch this gasket, right? I don't need to go that far. But is even all the way around up to that gasket, then it's pretty close. It's going to be better, won't be worse. So I think the name of the game is going to be low and slow, get it real close, and then take some fine sandpaper because this is too rough. I don't want that to be the finish. Just really touching it slow. So we started at 20 millimeters. We're at 22. We're going to get close. We're going to get right up against that gasket edge. I don't want to ruin it, but I also don't want to put it on the way it is. Okay. I'm now risking losing my gasket if I go any more. And we're up to about 24 probably. So we're 2 millimeters shy. But a lot closer. So, Trailmaster, if you're listening, fix this. This is dumb. It's a plastic piece that just needs to be 26 millimeters wide instead of 20 from the factory. Alright, now where were we? So, this is the reason that I was trying to do that. As you can see, it just now gets closer, but there's still about a mil of resistance. So you imagine that air coming through the carb and hitting a plastic wall. If anything, it should be sloped down to 20, but just a plastic wall at the outer edges is not good. So I think what I'm gonna do now is take some sandpaper and bevel right here, that direction. I can't do it on this side because I'll lose my rubber gasket, but I can bevel this a little bit. All right, now you can see, or probably not see, that it is just slightly wider on the back side. Now I realize there's going to go through there, get down to 23, and then hit another 26 millimeter opening right here. So really you just need this piece done correctly. Again, Trailmaster, hook me up. Another common mistake, look at the end of your carb. If you put this on upside down, you are now doing this. It goes this way. There you go. Put everything together loose and take a peek. Make sure your gaskets are where they're supposed to be. The last one I put together like this, the gasket got pinched right here, and I spent 2 days trying to tune a carburetor that I couldn't tune because of a pinched gasket letting in air on this side of the carburetor. Check your work. The torque spec on these guys is 1/2 of an UGA. Don't break these bolts. I'll say it again, check your work. Everything should be perfectly flat with nothing sticking up a little, or that might mean you stuck some of your rubber gasket right out of the groove. Turn your fuel on. Check for leaks, specifically right where your fuel line comes in, and if it's leaking out of your hose, which is around the other side, then you may have screwed up your float, or you may have left your float bowl drain screw on the other side unscrewed. Make sure everything's tight. I say that because I left my float bowl drain screw. Those of you wondering, this looks like a A7. Oh Jesus, it says A7 TC. So whatever you can get from that. Look at somebody getting creative. What I can only assume is that there's either supposed to be a chain guard here, which would be nice, don't get me wrong, or that was here. I hope it's for a chain guard. Just looks like a last minute decision to weld on a little tab.